Hey everybody, Mark Schultz here. I'm back again, and we're at the top of the hour here on day 3 of our Recovery in Aviation Digital Aircraft Recovery in Aviation Virtual Summit. Really glad to be here. I got a special guest here today. He's coming to me from Amsterdam. It's Sander de Bree with EXSYN Aviation Solutions. Welcome, Sander.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. Hey, Sander, can you tell us what your company does?
Yeah, sure. So EXSYN is involved in aircraft data management, analytics, and process automation with airlines and MROs worldwide.
Excellent. Write down what is our area of expertise. Yeah, that's great. Process automation, data analytics, airlines, and MROs. I'm really looking forward to having this discussion with you. That's great. Hey, listen, before we jump into it, I just want to let you guys know I really appreciate you joining the broadcast today here. We've been doing it on the hour. Practically every hour. This is our 3rd day right now doing it. And our whole goal is to focus on recovery in aviation and helping businesses to recover. And you know what? It's really been an interesting experience because there's a lot of companies that are doing really well. And I think you're going to find out right now that EXSYN Aviation Solutions is one of those. And we're going to get some really good ideas and strategies from Sander here today. And what I'd like to invite you to do is to share this stream so that as many people as possible can see it. I'd like to ask you to please help us out, help Sander out. And next, I'll say that if you're watching this on LinkedIn, there's actually a button up above that says join the event. And if you click that button, it'll take you to an offsite platform called live.recoveryinaviation.com. And the reason that we're promoting you to do that is because on this website that we actually have the broadcast and we have a chat box. And there's also an entire agenda there. And on the agenda, you'll see that EXSYN Aviation Solutions is listed there, and it gives you a way to reach out and contact him later on in the broadcast. Hey, listen, I'm really glad that you're here today. We're going to have a good, lively discussion, and so let's just jump right in. Sander, thanks. Appreciate you being here today, and wanted you to start out by saying, could you just for the benefit of our viewers here today, could you tell us what your role is in the company and just a little bit more about what your company does, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder and CEO of EXSYN, and that basically means that the R&D and product development team sits with me. Looking at what we do globally, what I mentioned in the introduction, we mainly work with airline engineering and maintenance divisions and MRO companies in the domain of data management, data analytics, and process automation. So basically every touch point within an airline that involves aircraft technical data has us involved, basically.
Yeah, fantastic. And how long have you been in business now?
Well, the team as we are right now is on the road pretty much since 2014, and so that's a little over 6 years now. We're, as you said, we're home based in Amsterdam, where we have a team of 15 specialists. We have a small satellite office in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia that we use for our Asia Pacific customers. And yeah, that's I mean.
Yeah, good. No, very good. Very good. Hey, I wanted to start out in this broadcast that we have today talking a little bit about the industry. And we've certainly had a lot of discussions about the industry in the last couple of days. And people have really, I hope people have begun to better understand it. It started out on day 1 with Dave Markentel from Oliver Wyman, and he was giving some really good information about the industry and kind of direct actions that people could take. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask you is that in your region of the world, what are you seeing, yourself personally? What's really happening in your area, to your customers, and what kind of big business problems are you really seeing? I'd really like you to kind of key in on the business problems. What business problems are you seeing some of your, potential customers or customers have today?
Yeah. Well, one of the key issues that we see our clients having right now, and mainly the counterparts that we talk to within airlines, is that now that everything has crystallized a little bit further, people sort of know what they're up against, either in terms of downsizing their departments, in terms of fleet reductions, and in terms of what the plans will be for the months and years to come. So what we see is that our conversation has shifted from something encompassing uncertainty to what can we now do with the facts that we have, and how does the digital offering that EXSYN has fit with that. And interestingly enough, is that the overall need for digital solutions within engineering and maintenance, and particularly around managing aircraft data, gaining analytics from that, and then also process automation that all supports that, is still very much relevant to a lot of these airlines and MROs. It's just how to justify the spend, how to justify the investment. So we see a lot of challenges in how to define that in tangible numbers, where previously the more softer gains might have been sufficient to allow engineering managers to pull in a process automation software, for instance. We now really need to focus on the bottom line gains that the airline will have, either in money or in savings or these kind of things, and that can pose its challenges on its own, because it's sometimes really difficult to quantify these kind of savings without ending up in the domain of the more intangible returns that they might experience from that. So that does come with some interesting discussions.
Yeah. No, I really like what you said about that people have gone from the position of really not knowing what to do, and now they have a little bit more of a defined set of parameters. I know it's not perfect for everybody, but they have a better defined set of parameters, which enables them to begin, repurposing, redesigning, refiguring out what their businesses need to do and where they're going to go. So that definitely has been a recurring theme that I've been hearing from people. So that's really good to hear. I wanted to come down into the next level with you and ask is that when you say you work with airlines and MROs, what areas within airlines and MROs do you really focus in?
Yeah, most of the focus is on engineering and maintenance. So that would be your domain of airworthiness management for airlines, the third-party MRO shops as well, to a lesser extent. So basically anything that involves continuous airworthiness management of an aircraft, that is where we typically get involved in.
Okay, that's great. And then so we can continue to hone that down to where people can really understand where a person like you, has knowledge and can actually help people with their problems. Is that within those areas of continuous airworthiness management and managing maintenance programs and things like that. Now you say you do process automation and data and analytics. Now, what does that really mean in that space? Like, can you give me some business case examples of what you've done for people and how that how it fits in really?
Yeah. Let me just give you a couple of examples, and a couple of them very recent actually. So combining data management and process automation, for instance, in the return delivery process of aircraft to leasing companies, for instance, something that is happening with several of our clients right now. Typical process of handing back an aircraft involves a lot of data and records reconciliation, audits being done on those records in order to justify that the aircraft has been maintained in according to the standards in which it needs to be maintained. And this is where some of our solutions come in, where we are able to automatically collect and structure all of that aircraft data coming from the airline's technical department, run automated validations on that against particular MPD standards, airworthiness directives, you name it, and combine that in the end with something like process automation to make sure that that entire process can run automatically without human intervention. So what you're practically looking at is an exercise which would typically easily take 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes even 4 to 6 weeks, dependent on the complexity, in records, reconciliation, validation, and auditing. That entire process that easily takes 6 weeks at the cost of manpower for those 6 weeks. we reduce that to an exercise which is done in I don't know, less than 24 hours basically.
Wow, that's impressive. That's got to give a really nice ROI, on those type of things.
Yeah. I mean, there's some industry figures out there, but on average, let's say a specific aircraft return from an airline to a lessor, I think industry average is at around 200K US dollars are budgeted for something like that. Well, if you look at that, we sit at a fraction of that cost. I mean, it's not even 1% of that. So those are used cost savings, both to the lessor as well as to the airline.
Sander, one time I worked on an aircraft return to a lessor, and I think I was on a team of about 4 people or so, and we worked on it for 3 months, and primarily it was records consolidation and validation, and we were looking up things like burn certificates and lots of things like that. But so there was a lot in there that could have been automated, and there was a lot of manual, tedious work. There was things that we were doing that I'm certain that could have been process automated through the kind of things that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, and that is just one example. I mean, another interesting recent example, which is with an MRO shop actually, which is also quite illustrative of the things that we do with MRO shops. And interestingly enough, in these times, this is a brand new MRO shop for the overhaul of wheels and brakes, of aircraft wheels and brakes, basically. And these guys started up their new shop from scratch with what we would call a digital first mindset. So we're putting in stuff like process automation to process incoming wheels, to make sure work scopes are defined, to make sure certificates and shop reports are created, all of those things, just to make sure that the mechanics and the engineers are able to keep their hands on the actual units themselves. Automating all of these kind of back office processes, applying shop tracking, all those things, which essentially means that they're able to turn around on a full overhaul of that component, where the industry standard might now be, I don't know what it is, like 6 days or something. And these guys are now able to turn around on it in 2 days, and just by doing this digital first mindset basically, and allowing process automation and analytics in there.
Yeah. So, Sander, are you finding that your business this year, is it going down? Is it going up? Are you finding any new business opportunities? What's really happening, surrounding your business right now and the type of things that you're doing?
Yeah, well, but basically all of the above. And I mean, it's with the industry slowdown or the grounding basically. We also noticed a downfall in our business. I mean, we had clients phoning us up saying, okay, we really love the stuff that we're doing with you guys, and whether that is process automation, whether that is advanced analytics, machine learning, whether that is basic aircraft data management, but we simply need to postpone it right now because we don't know if we will be here in 5 months' time. So we had that. We had cargo operators saying, okay, guys, are you able to accelerate? Because we are going to fly increasingly more hours. We're getting new aircraft in. So we need you guys to speed up. We've had that. So truly across the board. For us, of course, a shift from spending a lot of time with our clients to a full virtual cooperation model. Definitely something that happened. Overall, if I would look at where we are right now as EXSYN in 2020, I think we can't complain, and it gives opportunities. I mean, it has given us an opportunity to explore options in helicopters and road wing, to see if we can further develop and nurture our relationship with a couple of business jet operators. And we even had the opportunity to look into what we would call aviation derivative markets, where a lot of the aviation technology, like engines, is also being used, where we were able to see if we can, let's say, translate the aviation knowledge on engine health monitoring to that particular part. So yeah, it comes with it. It has provided opportunities as well. But to be honest, I rather would have had that flying would still be at 100% rather than what we have right now.
Yeah, I think one of the common themes is that everybody's saying we have to work harder, to get that work. I mean, we have to definitely look around more, and we have to look for where those emerging, growing markets are. And you just named 3 of them or 4 of them right there. You named cargo, and you named business jets. And did you say you're doing something in rotorcraft? What type of business are you looking at doing things in rotorcraft right now?
Yeah. So what we're doing in rotorcraft is more analytics oriented. So typically within the rotary or the helicopter industry, things like vibration monitoring have always been quite dominant. But the basic principles of reliability analysis, and from there moving to predictive maintenance and prescriptive and prognostics, is something which is still a little bit kind of like dark magic to them. But in essence, they have a lot of things already available to do that. So our work right now in the helicopter domain is focused on supporting these kind of heli operators, making the transition from an MSG2 maintenance philosophy, from a preventive maintenance philosophy, using reliability monitoring and analysis to go to a more MSG3 type of condition monitoring maintenance philosophy, and from there try to make a jump to predictive maintenance.
Sander, what can you help me? Is it? I know that businesses like yours, like you said at the beginning, a lot of times have ROIs which are not as hard or as distinct. It isn't like we're going to get rid of a certain number of inventory and we're going to save $1 million. I mean, how are you able to best justify return on investment with your customers on the kind of things that you're doing?
Yeah, it really depends on the use case. So if we look at process automation, the calculation is fairly straightforward there. We look at the business process within that particular airline. I mean, let's look again at that redelivery example. Performing it in a conventional way would take you 6 months times X amount of manpower equals X amount of dollars. Bring in process automation at the cost of X, and it is done within less time, and that is your basic cost saving. So process automation is a very straightforward calculation on manpower savings, which interestingly historically was never was a bit frowned upon basically, but under current circumstances this is the one accepted rationale basically.
Yeah.
With analytics, it's a little bit more difficult because a lot of that is intangible. So with commercial airlines, the return really sits in trying to increase that level of dispatch reliability and reducing cancellations, delays, which on their own turn might result in passenger compensation fees, for instance. So that's one of those calculations that can be made there. When it comes to aircraft data management, this is really difficult. If you need to invest X amount in order to make sure that your aircraft data is up to certain standards, that is a difficult decision to be made. At the end of the day, that mostly is a let's say a trade-off between compliance versus cost, basically.
Yeah, so in that space, I can see that is that compliance, and safety are things which we can never compromise on, and so I know that operators have to deal with that, and so that's really a difficult position that people find themselves in, because you obviously can't compromise safety and compliance, but you also have to find a business model that works, and that's why I like what you're doing, because what you're doing is you're giving them methods and approaches to reducing cost to still do the things they need to do, like compliance and safety. And so, that's, I guess the thing is, you just have to demonstrate or prove to them that you have a success history in being able to do that, up front. Yeah.
No, that's true. I mean, and over time we do have. We did build up quite a sizable track record. I mean, from time to time, I always say we're the WhatsApp of aviation, right? I mean, everybody in the world uses WhatsApp, and nobody knew this was just like a 16-man company somewhere in an expensive building in New York until they were bought by Facebook. But that's sort of what we are, right? I mean, we're not overly large. If you look at some of our competitors, we compete to the likes with IBM and whatnot. But if you look at our footprint, large major national flag carriers, we're global. It's insane, and that track record that does help. now with building that trust, definitely.
Well, and so let's just talk about a few of the factors of your business that make you successful, and how as a small business do you be successful in impacting in such a large way? I mean, and it's especially more important that we have these kind of conversations, right now. Like I'm going to ask you this: is that what kind of advice would you give to people as a small business that how they should be responding in order to be more competitive? I mean, and be more successful.
Yeah. Well, one of the number one feedbacks we continuously get from our clients, and I guess that is moving that forward, that would be one of the advices. I mean, we're always receiving merit on our flexibility and our agile way in doing things, without compromising on that level of safety. Right. So, I mean, at the end of the day, aviation is still aviation. So you can't just go around and try and test something. I mean, you need to follow certain steps in that. But within that, still be agile, still be flexible, and be able to turn around on some of these technology solutions in a fast and orderly fashion, rather than having a tremendously large implementation stage, which might take you a year from now in order to get something up and running. Which then again, the advantages and the gains that you want to expect from that particular solution push forward in time as well. So it's being agile, it's being flexible, but not compromising on your quality standards, because it is still aviation.
Yeah, right. Very good. No, that all makes really good, perfect sense. Hey, Sandra, I wanted to ask you this. If we look at some of the work you're doing in MROs, what are some of the business opportunities that you're finding in MROs today?
Yeah, well, MROs, engines, definitely. I mean, we're in I would say in an early stage of a relationship with a fairly large MRO shop, and what we see there right now is that there are two sides of it. Typically the engine MRO market, I mean, used to be focused on engine overhauls and those kind of things. But now there are two situations where owners of engines are choosing to send engines to shops, which is either because the aircraft that this engine was on is going to be returned, so they make a decision to put that engine through a shop, or they have to. I mean, this is the first time in aviation history that engines installed on an aircraft have not been used for such a long time, right? So, I mean, there are ADs out there right now on a couple of engines to check and inspect certain valves, because after a prolonged storage time, and those aircraft coming back into service have resulted in stuff like in-flight shutdowns. So these kind of activities make a increase in workload for engine shops. Now that might be a temporary increase, and you never know what's going to happen on the longer term. But that influx of work does again bring with it, okay, how can we sensibly manage this, and potentially even how can we increase our capacity by applying more digital solutions.
So, and I understand the business problem. That all makes perfect sense to me. I'm not certain I understand what you are doing to help solve that kind of a growth in effort. So, what would be a typical kind of a solution that you might put into an MRO kind of engine shop environment like that would solve that kind of a problem?
Yeah. Well, again, twofold. Think of process automation. To have their business processes run faster, smoother, more efficient against lower cost. That's definitely one. Think of what we would call shop analytics. So an engine comes in, dependent on which aircraft that particular engine has operated on. You can use advanced analytics to preempt what kind of findings you might have during the overhaul on that particular engine. And from there, you can cater on that in terms of expected turnaround time, spare parts you might require, those kind of things. So it's combining that element of process automation with advanced analytics to ultimately help drive down turnaround time of your shop visits, and by virtue of that, increasing your capacity.
Don't you have some kind of a piece of software or a dashboard or an analytics product that you have as part of your services that you provide as well?
Yeah, that's right. So Avialytics, which is basically an analytics platform that we've built up over time in-house, where we deploy all those kind of features. So on the one hand, it has a lot of pre-built functionality in there that mainly caters towards airlines, right? Think of reliability analysis, asset management, organizational performance, engine health monitoring, those kind of things. But in the MRO domain, and sometimes with airlines as well, we also use it to create a lot of customized analytics functionality in there as well. Big advantage of that being is that the entire architecture and infrastructure that you might need in order to do things like this, because because at that point you're talking about machine learning, for instance, and the power and the algorithms that you need for that sort of all comes out of the box within that Avialytics platform that we have. So it's harnessing that readily available infrastructure to sort of customize the analytical needs that might exist within the airline or the MRO.
So can you give me an example of the kind of a business problem that you would solve through the analytics platform? Like what type of data? Is it engine data, MRO data, reliability analysis, components? What are you talking about?
All of that. Industry example, the detection of recurring defects on aircraft. So historically, airlines have always been highly dependent on ATA chapters, right? So specific codings for aircraft systems that are being used to check whether or not certain complaints are reoccurring in aircraft systems. What we have done is said, okay, let's move away from ATA coding, because that is highly dependent on human input, and let's start to look at the actual complaint description and the action that was performed on it to rectify it, and those two are basically data points that allow you to recognize what the actual complaint has been. And if you do that on all the complaints over a specific period of time on an aircraft, you're able to detect any particular reoccurring defect on a component or an aircraft system just by virtue of looking at the complaint description and the action that was taken on it. Okay. So it's far more reliable and accurate than your classic ATA modeling, for instance.
So in that case, are you doing like logbook write-up analysis, or what is that? I mean, is that?
Yeah, that's logbook write-up analysis, maintenance log analysis, and that's all part and parcel of that.
Okay. Hey, Sander, we periodically like to jump in and take some questions that are coming in, and I want to know if I could just throw a couple of questions at you, from the viewers. Sure. There was somebody here, Richard Ziskind. He asked, does EXSYN perform engine and APU monitoring? Do you do that?
Yeah, so Avialytics actually has an engine health monitoring function that caters to both engines and well, theoretically can cater to APUs. I'm not sure if we actually monitor APUs right now, but engines definitely, yeah.
Can you say more about that? Because I know that manufacturers, of course, have very extensive, engine monitoring capabilities. What would you do that's different than like what somebody got from the manufacturer? So actually, yeah. Richard was asking specifically here now if you could address it from a 777. What do you have anything from that standpoint, or
Depends which engines are installed on the 777. But
okay.
Yeah. No, but if you look at the engine health capabilities and how it differentiates from what the OEMs are providing, and predominantly OEM engine health monitoring is focused on parameters that you can retrieve from the engine itself, right? EGT, N1, N2, temperatures, you name it, and they are being used to monitor the progression of certain values. When they exceed a threshold, that notifies the airline saying, well, something might be wrong with this engine. But if you want to look at the full scope of engine health monitoring, it's not just those parameters on the engine that determine how healthy the engine is. there's a large scope of maintenance history and parts that are being replaced on that particular engine that contributes to the overall engine health. Engine health in terms of fuel burn and how long it can still continue to run on the aircraft, basically.
Yeah.
So how we differentiate is that we bring that particular maintenance data into scope as well. I mean, from a proprietary perspective, we can't access all the parameters that an OEM might capture on its engines because they're basically locked away. But there is a range of parameters on the engine that are also being recorded on things like the QAR disk that we can read out. And those parameters combined with maintenance data actually give quite a holistic view on the overall health of the engine itself.
Okay. So he's still talking to us here. Richard wants to know if it's the GE90 or not. So
yeah, that's definitely possible.
It's what? Say that again.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, listen, Richard, as you're watching out there, we do have a way for you to get in touch with Sander. And if you're looking at the agenda on our broadcast platform, there is an agenda item there, and there's a button you can push that says "Get more information," and that'll allow us to capture information. We'll forward that on to Sander. Easiest way for us to do that. But thanks for asking those questions. I really appreciate it. If anybody else has questions, feel free. We have a few others here, but just feel free to ask any other questions you might have. So, Sander, I wanted to kind of jump to the next part of discussion I want to have with you. Is that what are you doing in this time to to manage your workforce as a leader? You know what? You might want to think about changing your title on your LinkedIn. It says you're the chief visionary, which that's a pretty broad thing to stick up to. I mean, you when we started the broadcast, you said you were this founder and CEO. That's easier. If someone says you're the chief visionary, wow, that gives you a pretty big title. So as the chief visionary of EXSYN Aviation Solutions, what kind of advice would you give to people out there as far as their companies are concerned, and managing of your own people and things like that? What are you doing to keep your workforce moving and managing of people and ensuring that everything is going in the right direction?
Well, a couple of things. Quite early on, we also forced due to the situation, we went into a full virtual collaboration mode, and not just between colleagues, but also with our clients. So we directly made sure that we had shared digital environments between our team, between our clients, that provided file sharing, instant messaging, video conferencing, everything that you need. And also really make use of that, right? So there's and I still have this from time to time, where you jump into a virtual meeting, and then everybody has its camera shut off. I said, yeah, but that's not the point. Then you could just as well have a phone call. And it's those kind of little things that are quite important to making sure collaboration and cooperation keeps existing. What we more recently started to do again is that from time to time, we do have these kind of all hands meeting. And so we get the team back into the office, of course, with the required social distancing that you need with that. But that is required that is important from a social perspective, and so to make sure that social interaction remains there. We did that digitally as well, right? So throughout this time, we had several different, let's say, highlights within the company that we celebrated virtually, whether that is people having their work anniversaries or certain other achievements. And in terms of collaboration with our clients, one other thing that we started to do there as well is also make sure that again there, next to having that virtual setup, that we have these fixed moments throughout the week, throughout the month, where we have this kind of like this fixed points in time where we are interacting with one another. And then in the same way as you and I are doing, right? So we might not be in the same room, but we're having a conversation as if we were sitting opposite from each other. And I think that is quite important to keep that human element, that element of human creativity alive in this kind of new way of collaborating with each other?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that this whole this whole need to collaborate digitally, it's really impacted people's perspective, I think. And just like what you said at the very beginning, is that I frequently would get on the calls with people in the past, and people wouldn't want to put their video cameras on, and if the way that we're going to continue to be communicating is through digital medias like this, I think it's important that we do. I've always been a proponent of telling people, let's have a video conference call, and I tell them that I'm going to have a video conference call with you, because I just think it encourages better communication when you can actually see somebody. And if I can't sit in front of you, I want to see your facial expressions. I want to know what you're thinking when I'm talking to you. And and if you don't say anything and you do this, I know what you're thinking. Okay. So it makes a big difference. It really makes a big difference. It really does. So I think that it's impacted people, and it's causing us to engage more, digitally. And I actually happen to believe it's a good thing. I really do. Listen, I tell people that last year I flew 480,000 miles, and I did that because it was necessary to perform the job that I was doing. Did I want to sleep on an airplane 2 or 3 nights a week for a whole year? No, I didn't. All right. Is there a better way? Yes, there is. Okay. And so I think there's a better balance. And I think that if we leverage the technologies that we have, like what you're talking about, that we can create a much better environment, a much more efficient, effective environment. And so I can really appreciate what you're saying, with respect to that. Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, and the balance, as you refer to it, I think you're spot on there as well. I mean, where actually tomorrow, it's a nice example. Tomorrow I have a 2-hour meeting virtual with the entire management team of a business jet company in Germany. And in previous times, that would probably I would have probably traveled down to where they're located, meaning flying in the day before, doing that meeting, and flying back in the evening.
Yeah.
Now we've set it up as a full virtual experience, and of course you need to approach that in a different way to get your audience engaged and to make it an interactive session, because it needs to be interactive, because it's about the future digital strategy for that company. But it's a new way, but it works, and people get more and more used to it.
It really does. And I think if people are prepared to interact in that way, it makes a difference. And, just like, for example, I like for people to ask questions, because I want to know, if we're addressing people's, topics that they want to hear. And when I have people ask questions, then we know they're engaged, and we know that people are watching, and we can adjust things, and we can answer things on the fly. And so I just think it's a new way of doing business. So, that's really good. And, and many of the people that we've been talking to over the last couple of days have made it very clear that their opinion is that these things are more a new way to go, and they're not just a temporary thing. It's definitely exactly. Hey, I do have another question which came up. I'm going to ask one more, and then it's more of a thing we're talking about, ideas from a CEO and a business perspective, not really from a technical perspective. But somebody here said, is that how do we overcome the conventional knowledge of virtual training conferences and not really a conference or training? And so, it's a really good question. Is it someone saying is that, I like going to conferences and meeting with people, and, and talking to people and shaking hands and touching products and things like that. And I think we all see that's a valuable experience. But I wanted to ask you for your opinion. I think that, the last time I was in Amsterdam, I was actually there for a conference. Okay, literally. All right. Yeah. And so, now I'm holding a virtual summit, which isn't really exactly a conference, but I've gathered together 62 people in 3 days, and I've put them out before, not quite 10,000 people, but by the time people watch views over time, I'm expecting there'll be, 50 or 60,000 people that will have seen the different things that we're doing. And you know what, Sander, I would not have had an opportunity to put 62 people in front of 50 or 60,000 people, if we went to a conference once. I'd have to go from place to place to place to place to be able to do that. And so I believe there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. I just wanted to get your perspective on that. What do you think as far as training and conferences and doing virtual interaction? What do you think about all that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the just my opinion. I mean, there's no substitute for human-to-human interaction. That and I think in certain elements that will still be important and will always play a role. I mean, regardless of where we have been in time, this kind of human-to-human interaction has always been a part of who we are, basically. But let's say the type of conferences where I think this is people will be more conscious as to make that particular decision whether or not to go somewhere, and particularly from a business perspective, whether or not to go to a particular conference and whether to visit that. Perhaps not just because they need to justify the cost, but the additional hassle that comes with it and everything else. So I think again here balance is probably going to be the right word. I mean, training. I see training moving into a virtual domain anyway, even already prior to COVID and global groundings. Things like virtual reality have been around for a couple of years now, and you have a lot of companies that were already experimenting with that and training schools, and that will just accelerate at this point. So it will. I think at the end of the day, everything will become a little bit more hybrid, right? So there will be this element of human-to-human interaction, but there will be but the element of digital interaction will just be larger than what we have been used to.
Yeah, very good. Yep, I really believe that. So listen, Sandra, I have to wrap up this broadcast. We actually have a hard cutoff at about this time. We actually have our next guest waiting for the next one on the hour. And so, listen, I really appreciate you taking time, out of your schedule to share, your knowledge on, data and analytics and on process automation. You guys are definitely making a major contribution. But the thing that's really interesting to me is the areas that you're having growth in, and I think people can really listen to that. And so I wish you the best in your business. And I wanted to tell everybody out there is that, again, we have an agenda. If you haven't seen it, it's on the broadcast platform, which is live.recoveryinaviation.com. And on there, we have actually a button which says get more information. And if you want to punch that button, you can put in your name and your email address, and we're forwarding those contacts to Sander, and then he'll get it, and you'll be able to continue the conversation. His LinkedIn and website are also at that location. So go there if you've connected with anything he says, or if you want to talk more about engine analytics or anything, okay, jump on there and we'll see if we can get you guys connected. And I really appreciate you supporting this conversation, Sander, about recovery in aviation. Thanks for joining us today. And for those of the rest of you that are out there, next on the agenda, we have a really amazing business jet operator, One Flight International, who's next on our agenda. And we know there's a really big growth in business jets. Even Sander just said it right now, that there's some opportunities. He's going tomorrow to visit somebody to talk about business jets. That's a great place to be. So join us on the hour for a conversation about business jets. Hey, thanks, Sander. We look forward to future discussions.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mark. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.